Hi guys, welcome to yet another episode of Microsoft ERP Beginners Tutorial Series. This is going to be a part 2 discussion on the Movement Journal. So we are going to cover all the topics that we have missed to cover in the earlier episode on the Movement Journal in Microsoft Dynamics 365. With that note, let's get started. Hi guys, welcome back to our discussion on the Movement Journal. This is going to be the continuation of the previous episode where we've already introduced the Movement Journal and we've already seen some of the basics about the Movement Journal, under what circumstances or under what scenarios that we should be using Movement Journal. All that we've already discussed in our previous episode. If you are new to my channel, please watch the previous episode and then come back here to learn about the Movement Journal. So continuing about the Movement Journal is we will be covering some additional scenarios from using Movement Journal in this part. So I'm in the Movement Journal section and you will see that the Movement Journal table is blank. But we know that we've already created a Movement Journal and posted it yesterday, but still you don't see it here because by default, this table is filtered by the non-posted Movement Journal transactions. So you may need to go here and clear it off. So you will see all those posted Movement Journal transactions that are available in the system. So these are the posted Movement Journal transactions that we were playing around with in the previous part. So if you remember in one of our discussion, we have seen that during the Movement Journal creation process, we need to manually key in the offset account in the system, which is both advantage and it also has its own disadvantage. Advantage here is you have a better flexibility. You can tag your own offset account for every single transaction based on the business scenario. But the disadvantage is normally this kind of journals are created by a warehouse worker, and the warehouse worker need to go ahead and manually map a offset account which may be incorrect offset account. So you may need somebody to review the Movement Journal before it gets posted, or we have already discussed about one workaround, which is we can get into the Movement Journal section and inside the Movement Journal name, and inside the name we have an ability to hard code offset account. We can predefine an offset account. That's what we exactly did in the previous episode. So as soon as you key in an offset account here and you create a Movement Journal, the offset account will automatically be defaulted from the journal names. So that will avoid a lot of mistakes that a warehouse worker can make while manually choosing an offset account. But on top of it, there is one additional feature. Let me bring that here. On top of it, there is one more additional feature, which is under the journal names, you can also tag a user group. Okay, user group. So if you don't have user group, you can just right click and also create a user group, or you can even go to the system administration. Under users you have user group, so you can go into the user group and create your user group, and inside the user next to tab you can also add the users that you wanted to add to each of the user group. So once you create your user group and you assign it against the Movement Journal names, if you do this process, then that particular journal will only be accessible by the users within the user group. Okay, meaning, for example, if I tag a user group against the Movement Journal and if I tag a different user group against this particular Movement Journal of type consumption, likewise I may even have a different Movement Journal which is specifically meant for data migration purposes, and I'm tagging an offset account related with the data migration for that Movement Journal, but I want that Movement Journal only to be accessible by the user group which is responsible for migrating the data or creating the opening balances. Then I can create a special user group and assign it against that particular Movement Journal. If I do so, what happens is whenever my user gets into the Movement Journal screen and try to create a new Movement Journal, the user will only be able to see the Movement Journal names for which he has access or for which he's been given access, that is for which he's a part of that user group. Okay, so that is again another level of security access that you can provide to the users to control your Movement Journal better. Okay, so that's another additional point I wanted to mention apart from the one we discussed in the previous part. Okay, so now let's go ahead with the movement journal and explore some additional scenarios that we missed to explore in the last part. So let me choose that movement journal name, and let's also quickly choose a warehouse and site. And yeah, let's go and create a movement journal. Um, let me add a item, and um, let me choose any item. Let me choose child seat, or maybe I'll change it to some other item because I used this before. Let me change it to a roof rake. Okay, so yeah, so the roof rake, yeah, this is a site and warehouse defaulted from the header of the movement journal, which we defined while creating movement journal. And we are going to increase the stock, which is almost equivalent to a purchase, that is inventory receipt, because the quantity here is a positive quantity. And always remember that while you are bringing in the stock into your inventory through the movement journal, the quantity is positive, you always need to mention the cost price. Okay, of course, if you want to bring in the stock with a zero cost price, then that's a different story. But in general, if you want to bring in the bring in the stock into inventory through the movement journal, then you definitely need to mention the cost price under which you are bringing in the stock, so that it will be helpful for the inventory cost calculation for that particular item. It's also quite similar to that of a purchase order, right? In the purchase order, of course, the cost price is coming from the unit price that's available against each of the purchase order line. And also, when you are posting the purchase order, the inventory will increase. Similarly, while posting the movement journal, the inventory will increase. While receiving a purchase order, the asset account will get debited. Similarly, here also the asset account tagged against the item will get debited, and the vendor account associated with the purchase order gets credited, because it gets credited to the vendor balance. Likewise, here we do not have any vendor association because it's a movement journal. So what happens is the offset account that we tag here, that gets credited, right? So there's a debit happening in the inventory and there's the credit happening in the offset. We already discussed this in the previous episode, but we will see that now after we post a movement journal now shortly. And yeah, the cost price, very, very important to mention, especially when the quantity is positive. What happens when the quantity is negative? About that, we will cover in the next scenario. So the cost price will be a little different when we are having a negative quantity. That we will discuss as the next topic. Okay, so now let's go ahead with this transaction. Let's validate it to make sure that the item is completely set. Item is set. So now let's go ahead and also post this particular movement journal. It's posted. So after the movement journal is posted, we can view the inventory transaction here, and you see that there is a inventory transactions with a reference transactions is created. So whenever there is a reference of transaction is getting created, then you should automatically know that that is for the movement journal. Okay, so if you are creating an inventory transaction for the purchase order, then the reference will be purchase order. Likewise, if it is a transfer order, if you are bringing in the inventory, then it will be like a transfer order receipt, right? Now it is a movement journal, so the reference is transaction. Likewise, this is equivalent to a purchase process because we are bringing in the inventory. So under the receipt, it says purchased. Okay, just in case if you are moving out the inventory using the movement journal by giving a negative quantity, then that will be considered as a issue. So against the issue, you will see something called as a sold status. We will see that later as a next scenario. Okay, and yeah, so this is for one quantity, and you will also see the cost price that we have just keyed in the movement journal line. So that's 1200. So that is the inventory transaction. So if you go to the ledger and check for the financial voucher, you will have the voucher transactions. Okay, so here The voucher transaction is, it is, as I mentioned before, getting debited to the inventory account, which is this, and it's getting credited to the realized loss or gain account, which is your offset account that you have mentioned within the movement journal line. And this account is from the inventory posting. So if I go to the inventory management posting profile, or even I can get into the item master item group posting, inventory tab. So this is inventory receipt. So here you have the account tagged against the posting profile. Okay, so that's the same account that's been used here. And likewise, this is the account that is 1310050 is the one that you have mentioned here in the offset account. Okay, so that's how the posting happens when you're increasing the stock. So now let's go to the other scenario. Let me very quickly create another journal. This time let's say the same one, this one, and yeah, let it be the same. So I'm going to just quickly add a line and choose an item. Let me choose the bumper. So that's the warehouse. That's the quantity. In this case, I'm going to do a negative quantity. Okay. So unlike the previous scenario where the quantity was positive, so we were receiving the inventory, and this one is we are issuing the inventory, that is we are removing the inventory out of the CS warehouse. So in this case, of course you can mention the cost price, but there is no need to mention the cost price, because whenever there is an issue happening, the cost price will automatically be defaulted from the item master. If there's no cost price on the item master, then it will automatically consider the average cost price of the item. Okay, so let's review what are the areas from where the cost price gets defaulted one by one. So in this case, you know, I'm not there's no cost price, let's say, in the item master, so the cost price is 0 here, and this is the offset account. So let me go and just validate this transaction and post this transaction. So now what happens is, if I check the inventory transaction, you will see that the again the reference is transaction, and this one is actually considered as sold against the issue. And if you go here and check, there is a cost price automatically populating here. Okay, so how does this cost price come? Is, as I mentioned, from the average cost of the item. So let's check that out. So let's get into this item master. So let me go into the product information management, release products, and filter for the item. So that's the item. So the item master, if you check the manage cost section, which is this, there's no price here, but the price is defaulted from the average unit cost. Okay, this is the same amount that got defaulted in the inventory transaction, right? So the cost price, even if you do not mention in the movement journal level, for the scenario of issuing, it gets automatically defaulted from the average unit cost. Okay, that's point number 1. And point number 2, so other areas from where the cost price get defaulted is against here, that is under the manage cost section. So let's say I'm going to mention a price here. So in this case, I'm manually entering a price, but normally you don't need to manually enter a price. You can just turn on this parameter. This parameter will automatically bring the recent cost price of the item. automatically. So in this case, I do not have one. So let me just put a value of 1200, for example, and save this. So now let me create another movement journal very quickly. Okay. And add the cost, I mean, the same item number. In this scenario, this particular cost price is being utilized from the item master to calculate the issue transaction. Okay. So let me also add one more scenario here. Let's say, let me quickly create a movement journal. Same journal name I'm using, and I'm using this item, site and warehouse. And let me use the same item, bumper, that one. And you see that the cost price is that one coming from the from your defaulted from your item master, which is here, right? But there is one more area in the system from where the cost price can also default from, which is under the manage cost. You have something called as an item price, and in the item price you can also set up item price. Just in case if you do not have a version, just double click, right click and get into the view details and create a version. So that's very easy and straightforward. So I've already created a version to save some time. So just create a version, and here I'm going to put a price. Maybe I'm going to put a lesser price because this time I'm going to choose this warehouse. Maybe this warehouse is quite near to the customer location, so my price is little lesser compared to the price for the other warehouse, sorry, other side. So yeah, so this is going to be 1100. So once you key in the price, go ahead and activate the pending price. As soon as you activate it, you see that the active price appears in the next tab. So the price is at the moment active. Okay, so now if I just go close this item and everything and go back, and let me now add another line here and choose my bumper, that one. And now let me change the site to that one. So if you see that for that particular site, your cost price is defaulted from the other area that I have just mentioned. Okay, so these are some of the areas like I would like you to explore them. Like they can default from the weighted average cost, or from the item master itself, or from the item price within the item master. So these are some areas that you need to be aware when you're getting started with the movement journal with respect to the cost price calculation. Okay, so now let's go and explore some bonus scenarios about the movement journal. So let me go and create a quick movement journal again. Let me use the consumption and that one. Let's add any item. Let's add this one, and okay, let it be positive quantity, and let's give a cost price as 1200. And also I'm adding one more item this time. We can add n number of items here in this journal. So let me add this roof rack, and let's make it as 1300. That's your journal. So let's validate it and post it. So in this case, if you go and check the inventory transactions, there's only one inventory transactions displayed, because the inventory transactions are displayed as per the line that I'm choosing. If I choose this line and get into the inventory transaction, it will only show the inventory transaction of the second line. Likewise, I'm choosing the first line and getting into the inventory transaction, so it's only showing the inventory transaction of a first line, that is first item number. So now if I go into the ledger and financial voucher, here I see the voucher of both the lines together, right? That is 4 vouchers are displayed here, which is the asset account of the first item, asset account of the second item. This is your profit loss account of the first item and the second item respectively, because the voucher number generated here for all the, that is for both the lines of item in the movement journal is same. As you can see, for all the 4 transactions, the voucher number is exactly the same. So that's the reason why, even though the inventory, you're going into an inventory transaction of the first line, but still the voucher, it's showing the voucher of all the lines in the movement journal. That's because the voucher number is the same for all the lines. But you can also change this. This is actually a parameter controlled thing. So now let's go to the journal names. Like I'm using this journal name. So just edit it. The new voucher by change date, instead you go and do it change date or item, and then save this. Go to the movement journal. Let's create a new movement journal now. Go to the movement journal and choose that journal where we change the setup, and that one, say okay, and create a same lines of item. Let's also create one more line, that one, and the cost is 1200, 1300. Yeah, so that's done. So let's now validate it and post it. So it's been posted. So now what we can do is, I'm choosing the first line and getting into the transaction, and it's showing me the transaction of the first line. And now if I get into the ledger and financial voucher, it will only show me the voucher of that line, because now the voucher number for each of the lines of the movement journal are different, because we have changed the setup here, which is new voucher by change date or the item number. So for every item line in the movement journal, we'll have a different voucher. Or if you're having different dates, if you're posting the movement journal a different date, so every date will also have a different voucher number. So that's the significance of this particular parameter in the inventory journal names. Okay, so there is also a reservation concept, which I'm not going to discuss today, because reservations, and some of the subscriber also asked me to discuss about marking and all those things, the difference between reservation and marking. So we will cover the reservation part when we discuss about the sales process later in this particular series. So stay tuned and keep watching the series. So at that time, when we discuss about the reservations, we'll come back to the movement journal and revisit all the concepts of reservation together. Okay, so I'm not going to discuss about the reservations for now. And one more small tip that I also wanted to give is, let me create another movement journal quickly. So this is with respect to the creation of the data. So let's just quickly create a movement journal. So I'm using that name and that warehouse. So let's say I'm adding an item, first one. So if you, just in case, want to add multiple lines here, just for the sake of opening balance creation, let's say thousands of lines of item you want to add, you don't need to add manually. You can either use the data management entities to quickly load all the items through your Excel import, or you can even use the Excel integration. That is, if you click on the icon over there at the top and just download it, and the Excel gets downloaded, and let me wait, some errors. Yeah, that's the right Excel. So edit the Excel. So then it will show you it will try to sync the data with the FNO system and bring in the line here. It still says retrieving, loading. So you got your line here. So what you can now do is you can go and add all the lines of item that you have, that you wanted to create, and just click on publish. So I do not have the item numbers. So let me just try to change this from 1 to 10, let's say. So similar process, right? You will also be doing the same by adding lines here. and then control home and just publish it. So publish successfully, worksheet updated. So that's it. So likewise, you can add n number of items here and go and publish it. So then you will be able to see the changes that's happening here. You can see as soon as I refreshed, it's changed to 10. So there is a close connection between the Excel and the movement journal. So likewise, you can even import 1,000 lines of movement journal lines and directly go and post the movement journal here. That way you can very quickly do the opening balances using the movement journal. That's another bonus tip I want to give you. So these are all different topics related with the movement journal. Hope you enjoyed. So we will continue our discussion on various inventory journal. I believe the next topic will be about the inventory adjustment journal, and during that session we'll also be seeing difference between the inventory adjustment journal and the movement journal. And then we will also cover try to continue our discussion on the counting journal, bomb journal, and all those things. So stay tuned, keep watching. There are a lot more interesting scenarios and episodes are planned, and they will be coming in a lot more faster moving forward. So keep watching, and thanks for watching this episode. And if you do not subscribe the channel, please hit the subscribe button and support my work.